All right, and we're live. Hey, Cameron Wood, thanks for taking some time to talk to my students and the interwebs about your experience. As I drop something, your experience at Ranken and as an alumni of the program. So thanks for taking some time. I'll just start with an easy softball of would you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Camron Wood, graduated in 2010. Have been steady in the field ever since I left. Started off early startup world doing front end work, and then graduated. Now I'm senior software engineer too on connected product and doing RFID and QR code management.
Run that job title by me again. Senior software.
Yeah, so like big corporations tend to do a tiered approach to their software engineering. So you have like junior level and then software engineer one, software engineer two, senior software engineer one, senior software engineer two. SW2s are effectively leads, team leads, and then you at least at Nike you'll branch out, right? You'll go from you either go into architecture from there or you go into like a lead position, a more management style position. So
Okay, so you've climbed the corporate ladder pretty well.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say pretty well. I did a lot of job jumping to get where I'm at, but
But here
it
you are.
worked out.
Nice, nice. And where did you mention your current employer? Where are you working now?
Yeah, so I moved up here to Portland to work for Nike.
You work for Nike.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I figured you checked out the Facebook first.
That's cool. And how long have you been working for Nike?
I came up here in December of 2019.
December of 19. And do they give you free shoes?
50% off.
Nice, nice. This looks like your home office. Have you been working from home the whole time, or just since COVID, or?
Yeah, it's interesting because this was my private music studio. It wasn't supposed to be a work office, and then COVID happened. When they sent us home, they were like, "Yeah, you guys will be back in 2 weeks," and then it's been a little over like almost 2 years now. So
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you're working remote for Nike. So do you work on their website? Do you work on their internal apps? What do you do for them?
yeah, so that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about like it's connected products, so it's sensor data, right? So it's back in web services, building lambdas, APIs, and such on all the architecture is built in AWS on this particular team. But it revolves around RFID and connected sensor products. So like technologies like RabbitMQTT and streaming platforms. That side with Rust is all built in Rustline.
Yeah. Bring it down. Bring it down to entry level, like my brand new students. Like, I don't know how easy that is, but just to give you the target audience is brand new.
Yeah, I'll shift it over to the other side, right? So there's QR code on the other side, which I think is a little bit more familiar technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, when you scan a QR code, that hits an endpoint in a web service somewhere, right? And that data from that QR code gets pushed into our system, and then it gets analyzed in different ways. So, for instance, like during the Olympics in Japan, right? If you would have scanned a Nike QR code during that time and you were geofenced into Japan's location, you would have gotten a different experience than if you would have scanned that same QR code in the US.
Oh, nice. So you play a role in that whole process of, yes, generating the QR codes, but getting the right audience to the right website or app.
Yeah, so there's like I mean, you can look at it as like redirect in that particular situation.
Yeah.
So there's a web service that sits in between, and we say, hey, I know that this IP address comes from inside of this geolocation of Japan, so I'm going to push you to this portion of the website which has Japanese Olympic-specific marketing on it.
Nice, nice.
Would be one instance.
Well, I got to tell you, from where I'm sitting, to have an alumni working at Nike is a pretty cool thing to see. So congrats on that. But you did mention the journey was a journey of multiple employers and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Talk to that. Talk to that.
lots of them. Yeah. So there's two different approaches, I guess, that you could take in this industry. You can be a person who gets into a position and stays there for a long period of time, builds a lot of skill sets. A lot of that's going to depend on what type of company you get into. If you get into a larger company like Nike, you'll have that opportunity for growth to start at the bottom, work on different technologies, move within the company. If you go to a startup, they generally have one stack, maybe two stacks, different types of technology that you can use. So once you've familiarized yourself with that and you feel like that you've gotten your skills up on that particular stack or that particular set of technologies, you generally have an option to either move into some other lead position and stay on those type of technologies, or you jump ship, right? And you go to another company, completely new stack, completely new set of technologies. So that was more of my approach. So I could gather up as many technologies as I could and figure out what I actually wanted to do. Turns out I ended up falling in love with backend technologies, right? So doing backend architecture, notification systems, event-based cloud systems, that type of stuff. So I think for me, it was more about figuring out where I wanted to be and getting my hands on a lot of things versus, some like sense of like blind loyalty to a company, right? People are always like, oh, I feel bad about it. I feel bad for the company or whatever. And I get it. It's not a personal thing, right? There's nothing emotional there. It's that I have to do what I need to do for my career and you have to do what's best for you as a company. So I try not to, oh, well, they've been good to me or they've done this or they've done that. You know what I mean? It's just like, this is a mutual respect. I've given you my time. I've given you my work. Now it's time for me to move on and try something new at a new company, a new technology. So I was able to like try a bunch of different stuff at a bunch of different companies. That being said, it comes with its caveats, right? Like you are going to get asked when you interview, like, why'd you leave so much? And you better have a good answer for that,
Yeah.
So.
Well, personal growth is always a pretty solid answer. I think that strategy is very pragmatic in the sense of you got to do what's best for you, and you want to grow and you want to learn. And I just knowing you don't want to be stagnant, not learning, not growing.
Yeah. That's always the hardest part, right? I mean, I left my very first position for that reason, right? It was a PHP shop. I wanted to move on to other languages, other types of technologies, more into cloud services and stuff like that, which at the time AWS didn't support Lambdas and such. So,
yeah.
You just got to figure out what it is that you enjoy more, because if you enjoy it, you'll be good at it, right?
Preaching to the choir, I agree 100%. I really do. I give that advice to 18-year-old, or 25 or whoever will listen. Any student that would listen is, what track should I pick? What should I study? And it's like, well, whatever you like is going to lead to what you do the best at, which is going to lead to the salaries that you're ultimately looking to earn, these big numbers, So.
I mean, you show up and do your best no matter what, right? Like if you take a position, you show up and you work hard while you're there. I've noticed in this industry that there's people that are like, oh, well, that I've been here for 5 years, I can't leave. That's not true. Like you're going to benefit yourself. I even read an article in Forbes once that said that people who stay in a position longer than 5 years end up making $1 million less total in their career, right? Like if you just extrapolated it out.
Yeah.
So it's, if you find yourself getting bored or you want something new, go get it.
Yep. I agree completely. So what programming languages are you working with nowadays?
Yeah, so things have changed over the last few years. I did a lot of PHP work early on, but like Golang and Node are huge right now. Sorry to say I never did touch Java.
Yeah, it's all right.
I never did I did some JSP and like some, like Java server pages and stuff like that at Graybar, but that was really just like front end build out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so everything's like, nowadays people are really concerned about speed. So Rust Lang, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Golang and then Node, right? So Node is like the low tier if you want to get an API up, quick, easy stack to work with. A lot of the backend technologies have changed, right? Like everything's document stores and DynamoDB and stuff like that because like not everything seemed to be relational anymore, right? So like relational databases I wouldn't say they've taken a back seat, but people take a more strategic approach to whether like, is my data model structured in a way that makes sense to put it in a relational database? A lot of those like GraphQL services and stuff like that are all built in document stores. So
yeah. Well, that's encouraging, and for my current class, some are new or second semester students, but in their third semester we really hit Node pretty hard. So we have Node in the curriculum, and we have NoSQL database, MongoDB and that kind of.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So you guys, do you do any TypeScript?
So that's on our radar, and I will say likely in the near future.
Yeah, that's a hot one.
Yep.
Most people who want Node paired with TypeScript at this point in life.
Well, as you know, as an alumni, we have advisory boards for our curriculum, and literally on our last alumni advisory board meeting, which was less than a month ago, TypeScript was heavily put onto our radar. So.
Yeah, I mean, it bridges that gap between other strongly typed languages and JavaScript, I think, especially in a teaching environment, you know.
Yeah, but we are learning currently the class is C#, so that's the class. I don't remember if C# was in your curriculum or not.
No, I think there was like a short
maybe
section on it.
Okay.
I remember doing a little bit of it, but
nice. So
C# still heavily used out there.
It's trending in the direction where we would replace it.
Yeah, that's what I assume.
You know,
so
St. Louis, there's a lot of job opportunity in St. Louis for C# developers, but as you mentioned, it's not the trendy thing currently.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just think there's other like languages that like benchmarking is the big thing now. People are a speed. So it's like if your language doesn't benchmark against something else, I mean that's why I think PHP got its death pretty much was because of Node.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to hear this answer. So you've got a lot of experience, and you've worked on presumably some cool software projects along the way. Are there any software projects that kind of stick out in your mind of like you really enjoyed it, or more specifically, it's just a cool project to work on?
Man, that's a hard thing to say. I've done so much stuff. I mean, like I recently built a event-based notification system that handles like SMS and push notifications and those types of things, which is always really cool.
Man down, did we lose you?
The fog got him.
The fog got him. I'm gonna pause.
Technology and how it was built. Like for instance, I built an automation system that took advantage of like Boolean logic, right? So you could build your own. Effectively, it was a JSON object that lived in a database, right? But it was an automation system, so the system would read out of it and it would pick particular steps based on other criteria and other information on actions that happened, right? So I find that to be cool because it is a fully automated, customizable system for the user, right? But that's more of like from a technology perspective. I have other projects like I did a website, more of like a DVR style system for the blind, right? So if you've ever done any work where you have to use screen readers and write code that's for a different type of user than you've ever used before, that's a really unique experience too, right?
That's neat.
Believe it or not, non-sighted people still use the internet. So that was a unique experience. So it's like I've come across a lot of really great, cool, fun projects. Ones that I think that the technology behind them is cool, and then the technology isn't that cool, but the project itself had an impact in the world in a way that I thought was awesome. So,
which brings me to my next question. So, what do you think is the most used product? Do you have like any analytics on like this is how heavily used my software has been?
I mean, from like a individual user perspective or like volume of traffic, right? Because like I was on some middleware teams at Nike that like handled sales data. I mean, we're talking like billions and billions of records in a month.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, the big numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. So, historically, I've worked on, I've been in a lot of, smaller companies or, like at CBS, we did their college sports their college sports application so they can make publications about college sports. So I would say any of the stuff that's had really high volume traffic is all came from Nike.
Yeah, that's cool. And so, how many records were you saying you were involved with? As far as
I mean, it's all a marketplace, right? So it's like everything Nike sells. I couldn't even begin. Like our QR code system alone gets like 10 million a month, right? Scans. Well, it also takes. I guess you have to account for RFID scans as well. Like, so if you buy a new pair of Nike shoes, it's gonna have an RFID in the box, and you can scan it. which is one thing for you, right, as a consumer, right? So you can scan it, get information about your product. There's also things like shop this look. So you walk into the store and you can hit a QR code, and then somebody from the store will just bring you all of those clothes, right? Is that part of it, like offline to online experience?
Yeah.
But more importantly, there's like a whole customs agent piece behind that, right? So at the borders, we find that a lot of Nikes go missing. So having that QR code in the box, and there's a custom iOS application for customs agents that allows them to scan RFIDs and QR codes and make sure that the product that's in that box is actually going where it's supposed to go before it crosses a border. Because there's like a street in New York, man, where like every time a truck goes through, a whole box of Nikes goes missing. So we're like, where they ended up? Are they ended up in China? Are they ended up in Japan, right? Because it's going to come down to like some kid's going to buy a pair, scan it, now we know where it's at, right? Is it where it was supposed to be?
That's awesome. See, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat stuff, man. Yeah. Like the world is changing and quite advanced nowadays. Yeah. And the barrier of entry to do this type of stuff is so cost effective now that AWS and Google Cloud Suite offer these things at a very free tiered level if you wanted to just play around with it yourself.
Yeah. Why do you why should a young person choose this industry?
Not for the money, I'll tell you that. If you think you're getting in here to make money, you're gonna have a bad time. Because while the money is good, the work is very hard, and you really need to enjoy this. Like, if you're sitting there telling yourself, I don't think I'm gonna like this, then you might want to consider something else.
Is that because at the end of the day, you can earn a good salary, but if you're miserable, the salary's not worth it?
I've never seen someone who didn't really love this succeed, right? I've seen them flounder, like, through the industry or whatever, but kind of always like they get to this like mid-level engineer and they don't have any growth for it. They don't have the passion to go out and push themselves to get a little bit better. And if you don't have that, you're not really in love with the idea of how things work on the on the internal capacity. I mean, there's still a place for you, but you just have to decide what it is you want from this position. I've met so many people that are like, oh, I'm going to go into software engineering because it pays a good salary, which it does. But can you sit at a computer for 8 hours and debug? Like, is that something you're capable of without tearing your hair out? Because a lot of people aren't,
Yeah.
But there again, like, I work with a guy, a team I was on at Nike before. The guy used to be a lawyer, passed the bar in California and in Oregon, and just didn't want to do it anymore, right? So it's like you meet a lot of people that used to do other things in this industry, like guys that used to be writers and playwrights and stuff like that, or like becoming software engineers, right?
So to summarize your answer is you should get into this because you like to do it. And what is it? What do you mean, do you like to sit at a computer for 8 hours? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, for me, it's more about like I enjoy problem solving and building, right? Yep. Like, do you enjoy building things? Do you enjoy being an individual contributor? Because, I mean, the first 10 years of your career is going to be that, right?
Yep.
Like, do you enjoy being able, like, taking time to write documentation? Because half of this job is also documenting what you do and being able to put it in a way that the next person that comes in and understands. It's not just writing code, right?
So let's put it succinctly. You would advise a young person to get into this industry if they enjoy problem solving and building new things.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's where I find myself at my core, right? I like to build stuff.
Yes, yeah.
Which is why I enjoy it, right? So me taking out time or 3 hours to go read documents on some other technology is just aiding me in being able to build the new thing that I want to build.
Awesome,
right?
Awesome. I think that's a great answer. So what's a day in your life like as far as the job is concerned?
I mean, it's pretty casual, man. Like, I get.
Well, you look comfortable. You got the guitar on the wall. You got the books. You.
Yeah. So I take a lot of breaks. I wake up. I get to work around 10. I usually work till about 4. But that being said, while I'm there working, I'm working. Right. I'm usually not messing around. So I'll put in like my core hours. I'll sit, once my brain fires up and I start coding, then I'll put in, 4 or 5 hours in a row. And then after that, it just kind of fades. And I usually end up playing guitar or doing something else like that when I'm working from home.
Yeah. Well, that was already one of the students that kind of asked, like, well, he must play guitar. He's got guitar on the wall.
Yeah, lots. That's my free time hobby.
That's your passion outside of work.
Yeah, that's the one I won't turn into a job, I guess.
Yeah. So you mentioned, 10 to 4, roughly 5-6 hours of coding. Do you have meetings and this kind of stuff as well? And
Yeah, on occasion I do. It depends. Like, some companies are super harsh about agile and like wanting to meet all the time, and it's going to depend on the team that you're on. Particularly with me, I probably have a couple of meetings a week, based on what's happening in my project, what's pertinent, if anybody needs any help, anybody needs somebody's trying to integrate with one of my systems or something like that, for instance.
Yeah.
Then we would have we'd pair up and have a meeting on that. But the industry's like, agile has become like the standard, right? So it's like ticketing systems are almost the way that all software engineers are going to get their work these days.
So are you on a ticket system then? Yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of always been. I mean, a lot of times I find myself writing my own tickets or writing tickets for other people and stuff too. But it's an easy way to keep track of work. I find that I even with my notebooks and stuff, I find myself using like Agile and Kanban just to like manage my own life, right? Even like things that aren't necessarily work related too. So
yeah, very very okay, cool, very cool. So Agile ticket system, 6 hours of coding, some meetings here and there, but you get your new work, coming through the ticket system, and that keeps you busy.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I do a lot of like architectural style meetings and technical question meetings, but when I say 5-6 hours worth of code too, I'm also like checking emails, and I get questions on chat and stuff like that. So it's not just like a brain. I don't want to make it sound like it's like this brain numbing, like come in and like slave drive you to code for 6 or 7 hours, because that's not the case. I mean, you kind of make your own day. You kind of decide on your own deadlines. Which is one thing that you have to get really good at, because it's like in my head, I think I could do this in 2 days, but the reality is I probably need to learn to buffer those types of things, right?
Sure.
Estimation is a big part of this job, is being able to estimate accurately.
Yeah. What tips would you have for my students on landing their first job? Like tips to get their foot in the door.
Yeah. So your first job, my suggestion would be, first thing, don't get discouraged when you don't get the job, right? There's a lot of people out there looking for those jobs. There's a lot of people, and most of the time, if you don't get a position, it's not because you aren't good at what you do. It's because you just didn't happen to be the right fit for that position, and you will find the thing that is right for you. I have been turned down many times, and you learn to be okay with it. But it can be hard at first. Looking for a new job, know what your skill sets are, know where you actually land. But if you look at a job rec and you have 5 of those 10, go for that job. Don't try to wait till you have all 10. You can check all 10 of those boxes, because 90% of the time people are looking at, does he have a majority, or do they have a majority of what they need? And if they do, then we can bring them up and train them up on the rest, right? It's not super important about, don't shoot yourself in the foot and try to find the perfect position. Also, work with recruiters. Be nice to recruiters, but also don't overdo it to where you have 10, 15 people looking for jobs at a time. Find one that you really like, that you click with on a professional level, and work with them. Exhaust their resources before you move on to the next one, right? Because I found myself in positions before where I've got 4 interviews in a week, and it's just like, you've done that to yourself, right? Like, you're like, it might sound good, but preparing and being ready and taking 4 interviews is emotionally exhausting.
Yeah, those are all good tips. Yeah, and finding a good recruiter that'll fight for you, and you. And
they're not all good. Like, there's a lot of them out there that are looking to get a paycheck, and they will push you in whatever direction that benefits them. So really pay attention to that. Get to know some people. Go to job fair events. Check people's personalities. Go to lunch. Do that type of stuff.
Really good tip. Did you ever continue your education past Ranken as far as degrees are concerned?
Yeah, so I did end up going to Webster for a semester, but I ended up getting a job offer at a startup, so I left.
Gotcha. I just didn't. Yeah, I didn't remember. I didn't know. So
Yeah, I was enrolled, and then I was just like, they were like, hey, we'll pay you all this money, come over here. I was like, all right.
so successful. Let's just call it 12-year industry run, and it didn't require more than your associates.
No, so what actually happens, and it's kind of interesting, and I don't know if this is due to like the fact that like boot camps and things exist now, but around that 5-year mark, people like stop caring about your education career. Yeah. Whether you had, I mean, if you went to MIT or something like that, then you probably want to keep it on there because that's a benefit to you.
Yeah.
But I almost never get asked about it anymore.
Yeah, well, sure. And I'll say the same thing, just in a different way. When an alumni goes out and they get, I'll even say 1 to 2 years experience, they very rarely come back to Ranken and say, can you help me find my next position? Because once you have that experience, that's the golden goose. That's going to be what you use to get your next job.
Yeah, and that goes back to that original statement I made about being happy about the piece of paper that I got from Ranken, right? Like that gave me that opportunity that got me in the first startup, which gave me my first 2 years of experience, which in turn got me my next 2 years worth of experience. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm happy about it personally.
We've touched on the salary topic, but what kind of general guidelines would you give to, again, like maybe starting out and where to look for, 3 to 5 years? What tips would you give around that?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of that's going to be based on where you live. I will say I didn't break 6 figures in St. Louis until I had 5 years experience. So, be wary of people overpaying too, because like I've seen companies that staff up and overpay, and then when they can't afford it,
you're the first to go.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. But at the same time, know your worth. Like it's pretty easy to. Well, there's a lot of tools out there to do market research right now and know what you're worth based on your experience and the type of job that you want to do.
What are some of those tools?
So Glassdoor is a great one, for instance. Always research your company on Glassdoor, but there's a lot of salary resources. LinkedIn has salary resources out there if you have their pro version. But use those to your advantage. But always ask for a little bit more too, because chances are they have a range that HR person is sitting there with a range. Like you might have came in, gave salary requirements, and when negotiations come, don't just take what they offer you. Always ask for more. The worst that's going to happen is they're going to be like, sorry, this is what the position pays. And then you'll be like, okay, that's what I came in knowing anyways. But a lot of times I've been in interviews, and at the end they're like, okay, here's the salary requirement. And I say, okay, well, can I ask for another 5? And I'll end up with another 5, right? Because the amount of time it would take for them to go back to the table and interview somebody else versus give you $5,000 over the next year it's a pretty no-brainer, right? Yeah. Especially if you're the right person for the job.
So negotiation tactics there. I mean, and also, what comes to mind is a closed mouth doesn't get fed. It doesn't hurt to ask.
No, I mean, that's the power of asking or whatever. Like, it never hurts to be told no. What's the worst that happened? You get told no. Now, there is people have the fear of like you pricing themselves out of the situation. And I've seen that happen before too, where somebody was probably worth 50 or 60 grand a year as a newer engineer, but they wanted 120. It's just like, all right, dude, that's just not going to happen, right? So they priced him out, and he didn't get the position. He didn't convert from the contractor. Contract positions are another great way to do it too. Like if you want to get into a company and they're not actively hiring, full-time positions, try a 6 months. Try a 6 months to hire contract, right? It comes with a bunch of crap where you don't have insurance and like all of this stuff, and it kind of sucks. But 90% of the time, if you're on that team and you're doing a good job and your 6 months comes up and they think that you're going to leave, they're going to convert you if you're doing a good job and you belong there.
Yeah. Cameron, you are such an amazing resource to us. So thank you so much. What are we missing? What tips, advice, guidance? What are we missing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we covered a lot, right? Like we covered pretty much like all entry-level industry basics. I don't have anything else particularly off the top of my head, but that being said, you've got my email. If you guys come up with some extra questions or you'd like to hear from me about something or you're just curious about it, shoot me an email with those questions and I'll get back to you for sure.
Thank you. Let me open it up to my class now. you know, they've been hearing these interviews for a semester and a half now. So some of the stuff they've heard a little bit before, but a lot of it's a brand new perspective. So, what do you guys think? Any questions for Cameron? Yeah, what do we got, Ryan?
So whenever we get our first job, like that first job, and
I'll repeat it if you can't hear him.
should we expect to not know anything
Yeah.
into our first job?
Yeah. So you're coming in, you're green. You know, what are the expectations of the employer on, you know, your knowledge base and your, you know, what they're getting?
Yeah, so that first employer is going to vet you to some extent. Like if they're looking for somebody to hit the ground running with CSS, they're going to ask you CSS questions. So the chances of you actually sitting in that seat without knowing something is pretty low. Yeah. But that being said, you're going to do a lot of on-the-job learning, and that is expected of your employer at a junior level. They don't expect you to come in and know everything. And my honest advice is when you don't know something, speak up about it. Make it clear that you don't know it. You know, I even till this day run into AWS resources that I've never seen before, and I got to go to a senior architect and be like, hey, I don't know anything about this. Can you teach me? So it's like, use those opportunities.
I think that was kind of mind-blowing for me when I was, you know, in the industry. I would talk to an experienced professional with 15, 20 years, and they would say, Evan, I still learn stuff every single day.
Every day. I just built a whole system on Kafka. I had never seen Kafka before. Yeah. So I spent the last 6 months learning Kafka.
And so it's like, it's amazing that's just an amazing thing. You know, it's like, the question is, you know, how much do I have to know? And it's like, well, you got to know something, but you're not going to know it all. And especially as a green, you know, entry level position.
Yeah. So it depends too. Like if you want to go to FANG, you want to work in one of the FANG companies, you are going to need algorithms. That's just the way it is. That's where they set their bar. And if you can do bubble sort and multi-sort and these types of algorithms, that's what they're going to ask you. Traverse binary trees, that type of stuff. That is a completely different situation everywhere else. Like in my experience, only FANG is doing that to you.
Yeah.
So, you know, think about that before you want. If you want to work at Google, then you should be on LeetCode doing algorithm-based questions.
My tool of choice is Code Wars. I get them going on Code Wars.
Code Wars, yeah, any of those types of things where you're working at algorithms and stuff like that.
John, you had a question?
Yes, it's about the Rust language. It's kind of the first time I think anyone's talked about that. What does he use that for?
Yeah, could you expand on Rust?
Yeah, so Rust is the primary language that is usually used for connected product type of things. So IoT-based solutions. Rust is the primary language that's built on, and it's a super, super fast language, but it is a strictly typed language where you have to define, for every variable, you have to tell it exactly how much memory the space is going to be taken up. So you would type that variable with like U32, right? Like a Unicode 32-bit character, right? So there's no garbage collection in this language. So what happens is things come into scope and go out of scope, and they're automatically released from memory. So it's like a completely different style of language that's used for super, super, super fast. Like Amazon offers like a car that you can buy and you can drive it over the internet, right? So it's a IoT-based solution where I have a remote control that works through the internet and controls an IoT car. Think about how quickly that has to work to be able to actually accurately maneuver that. So that language is very much intended to handle those types of solutions. But it's becoming super popular because IoT and the Internet of Things is super popular. So I would suggest that anybody who's interested in physical device to internet connectivity takes a look at it. That, and then it pairs with RabbitMQTT, which is a queuing system, message brokering system that sits in between that it allows you to actually chat with your device.
You are such a good resource. I wish I had interviewed you 10 years ago. Yeah. every semester I'm going to get you on the line. Yeah. Another question.
10 years ago I would have been like, CSS?
Kind of like a second question I already asked, but should we be comfortable with not knowing something at our first job?
So the question is, should you be comfortable not knowing something?
Yeah, you should be comfortable with it, but you should also do your due diligence to learn it, right? Like, it shouldn't be something that's hand wavy where you're like, oh, I don't know that, I don't need to know it. You come across that situation, recognize what you don't know, be honest with yourself, be honest with your peers about what you don't know, but also put in the effort, man. Take the time to read the book or do the lesson, or YouTube's a huge resource even for me a lot of times. Like if I just need something quick, a quick answer, YouTube's usually got it.
No. Anything else, folks? Cameron, I can't thank you enough, man.
Yeah, anytime, man. I'm actually off today, so this was pretty convenient.
Perfect. Well, enjoy the foggy day. I saw the smoke in the background. It looks like it's clearing up a little bit.
Yeah, sunshine's coming in. The marine layer starts to burn off about this time, so.
Nice. Enjoy the day. Thank you so much, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah, for sure.
All
You guys
right.
have a nice day.
Take care. Later. Bye.